Welcome back, guys. I trust you've been staying safe. Now, today's true crime story is a unique one. It takes a deep dive into the life of Duane Davis, aka Keefe D. For those of you who are not aware, Keefe D is a very controversial figure in the gangster world and also a very prominent and controversial figure in the hip-hop scene in the United States of America. Keefe D, currently at the age of 60 years, has been arrested as at the 29th of September 2023 as the key suspect in the shooting demise of Tupac Amaru Shakur in September 1996. This is a case that has traveled over 2 decades, and now Keefe D, at the age of 60 years, has been arrested as a key suspect. But then, this true crime story is going to take a deep dive into the life of Keefe D. Who is the man? What is his origin story? How did he even come up? What is the genesis of the man known as Keefe D? And how did he end up in a situation where he is now the key suspect in the shooting demise of Tupac Amaru Shakur? If you are ready for this ride, just buckle up and let's go. Now, our story begins on the 14th of June, 1963, when a young boy by name Duane Keefe Davis was born. Duane Keefe Davis then became a very key person that would grow up in the Southside Compton Crips as a gang member. He would then take on the moniker or the nickname Keefe D. This man was on his way to stardom. He actually played American football with Suge Knight. For those of you who don't know Suge Knight, just keep your fingers crossed. I have another video cooking on who Suge Knight is. These are key players, not just on the football field at the time, but they would become key players in future as far as the American hip-hop scene are concerned, because in the end, Suge Knight would also become a very key figure in the hip-hop meteoric rise of Tupac Amaru Shakur, and also a key suspect in his passing at the time. So Duane Keefe Davis, aka Keefe D, had this beginning, and one would think that this guy would be on his way to becoming a very prominent football star. He had the build and he definitely had the weight as well. But then things went sideways for Keefe D, and some way, somehow, instead of pursuing a career in American football, he ended up becoming a key figure in the South Side Crips in Compton, of course. Keefe D from this point will delve in and will have a life engulfed in chaos, wrestling with the law, and brushes with death. He would ultimately end up being mixed up in one of the most controversial murder cases of all time, if not the most. And this was the murder of Tupac Amaru Shakur. This would unravel on the 7th of September 1996. And if Duane Keefe Davis, aka Keefe D, wasn't as controversial then, this particular case set him apart from all controversial hip-hop figures and put him in a class of his own, because he would end up traveling over 20 years being a suspect without being charged and convicted up until 2023. How did this case unfold? Now, 3 hours before the shooting of Tupac Amaru Shakur on the 7th of September 1996, there was a guy by name Orlando Addison, and Orlando Addison would end up being involved in a fight with Tupac Shakur and his entourage at the MGM Grand Hotel in Las Vegas. This fight would metamorphose later on to become something else. Initially, it started as Tupac getting into it with a guy, his entourage coming in to help him out. But little did people know that this was the genesis of an event that was going to shake the American music industry and the hip-hop culture to its very foundation and travel over 2 decades. So, Las Vegas homicide lieutenant by name Larry Spinoza then told the media that at this point, Orlando was not a suspect after Tupac had been gunned down, because most people felt that he was rather a victim, and I understand, because he seemed to have been assaulted. There are actually reports that his shoulder seemed to have been dislocated. So, at a point in time in the investigation, Orlando Anderson will eventually be named as a suspect with his uncle. But the question is, who was this uncle? Guess what? It was none other than Keefe D. There were stories circulating on the streets that after Tupac had been gunned down, Orlando Anderson actually bragged about taking the life of the rapper, but then Orlando Anderson would actually go on to deny this in an interview later on with Vibe magazine. Anderson was then detained in Compton a month after the shooting with 21 other alleged gang members, but surprisingly he was not charged. However, according to the police, the raid that they did was just connected to other shootings other than that of Tupac. Now, the Las Vegas police discounted Anderson as a suspect at this time, and according to them, the fight in which Tupac was involved with Anderson was in a Las Vegas MGM lobby, and this happened just some few hours before the shooting, so they really didn't seem to think that it was really connected. But unfortunately, the police failed to follow up with a member of Tupac Shakur's entourage who had witnessed the shooting and had actually gone on to tell the Vegas police that he was going to be able to identify one or more of the assailants. Personally, I don't understand why they failed to do this follow-up, because that was key. This murder had happened and you are looking for information. So if this person comes out that he knows the person, or he can name one or more of the assailants, I think that it is a motivation for you to actually get to talk to this person. But some way, somehow, the police failed to follow up. And this person was none other than another rapper by name Yaki Gaddafi. But Yaki Gaddafi was also one of Tupac's outlaw members. You know, Tupac belonged to this group called the Outlaws, and Yaki Gaddafi was a member. I don't know if that's how come the police discounted what he said, because maybe they felt it would be biased or something. I don't get it. But I think at least they needed to have spoken with this guy, because maybe this case could have been solved earlier if they did. But unfortunately, after discounting to follow up on this alleged witness, Yaki Gaddafi also ended up meeting his untimely demise just 2 months afterwards. Aside him, the police also failed to follow up on an alleged lead from a witness who had spotted a white Cadillac similar to the car from which the fatal shots were fired, in which the shooters escaped. If you are not familiar with how the whole shooting went down, don't worry, I have a video cooking on it. Now, a year later after all this, Tupac's mom, by name Afeni Shakur, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Anderson. In response to a lawsuit Anderson had also filed against Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight. You remember Suge Knight? He played football with Duane Davis, Keefe D, And now Suge Knight is the CEO of Death Row Records at the time of Tupac's passing. So Tupac was an artist signed to Death Row Records. And as fate would have it, Suge Knight was actually in the car with Tupac when he met his untimely passing. Now, Anderson filed this against Suge Knight, the CEO of Death Row Records, and Tupac's estate. Anderson's lawsuit sought damages for injuries resulting from the scuffle he had with Tupac at the MGM, and also for emotional and physical pain. So the legal battle was on. Now the battle had moved from the streets to the courts. Now Tupac's mom's lawsuit was filed just 4 days after that of Anderson. And the Associated Press lawyer reported in 2000 that Shakur's estate and Anderson's estate settled the competing lawsuits just hours before, unfortunately, Orlando Anderson would also meet his untimely passing. So these guys were dropping like flies. And that's one of the things about the gangster life. You never know when it's your turn to go. And these guys were just dropping. Bodies were dropping. And I think that is very unfortunate. I believe that in as much as there could be animosity based on beliefs and affiliations, it's not enough to just go and end someone's life because of that. I think it's very unfortunate. So from this point, there were several conspiracy theories, and we will get into it. One of them was that the whole Tupac demise shooting thing was orchestrated by none other than the Notorious B.I.G. Because at the time, Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac, they were the big guys at the time, and they were going head to head, Bad Boy Records versus Death Row Records, as you would have in several beefs that have done the years, like Jay-Z, Nas, and all, 50 Cent versus Ja Rule. So these things were going on. And at the time, it was Tupac and Biggie. So, as is natural, some people were of the view that if Tupac had been fatally gunned down like this, then B.I.G. is the suspect. Notorious B.I.G. and his management actually came denying this and providing some form of evidence to that effect, that at the time of the actual incident, he was even in a booth recording a song. That is also disputed to an extent, and the evidence they brought deemed inconclusive. But then, the next conspiracy theory is more tricky. There were people who were of the view that the whole incident was orchestrated by none other than Suge Knight, the CEO of Death Row Records, because at the time there were rumors that Tupac was getting ready to exit the label, and given how hot Tupac was at the time, if he exited, Death Row Records would be losing huge sums of money. Therefore, Suge Knight couldn't get him to stay, so he decided that if he couldn't have him, then nobody will have him. Could that be true? Honestly, I felt that was too much of a stretch. I didn't believe it. I felt there was something else out there that a deeper investigation would have to unravel, because it seemed like these guys were living the fast life. They were in a dangerous environment with dangerous people and associates, and if you know the street code, most people, if not all, are not ready to cooperate with the police, especially when people know that snitches get stitches. So I knew the police had their back against the wall with regards to making positive strides in the investigations. But then I felt that all these conspiracy theories were just to divert the focus and attention and progress of the police, instead of actually make positive headway to break the case. Then comes the third one, and this is where we are now, with Keefe D now being the key suspect under arrest at the age of 60. Now, the third conspiracy theory has it that Keefe D was involved in what happened, and that P. Diddy, the then executive of Bad Boy Records or Bad Boy label, was the one who put a bounty on the head of Tupac and Suge Knight, the then CEO of Death Row Records. It seemed like something out of a movie where somebody puts a hit on somebody, but I don't know where you are watching this video from, but if you are aware of what goes on in these gangster situations, especially at the time, it didn't cost much for somebody to put a hit on somebody. Not to talk of when the amount involved is $1 million. So, in October of 2011, a former LAPD detective by name Detective Greg Caden, who is also a former investigator in the murder of Christopher Biggie Smalls Wallace, released a book. And in this book, he was claiming that Sean Diddy Combs, aka Puff Daddy, commissioned Duane Keith Davis, aka Keefe D, to end Tupac Shakur as well as Suge Knight for $1 million. This statement right there then becomes consistent with that conspiracy theory. The problem then was the evidence to back it up. Now, Keith Davis, or Keefe D, and Caden claimed that Orlando Anderson was present in the vehicle that pulled up next to the BMW in which Tupac was fatally shot. In a recorded conversation with Caden, Keefe D claimed Anderson fired the shots that ended the life of Tupac Amaru Shakur. Now, Caden's implication of Anderson was similar to allegations made in another author's series and another writer's book. Each of these accounts said that 4 black men were in the white Cadillac that pulled up alongside the BMW that Suge Knight and Tupac were riding in on the night of the fatal shooting. These accounts independently reported that Anderson was in the back seat of the Cadillac and fired at Tupac by leaning out of the back window. So, you see the consistency coming from different writers. But again, like I said, what was lacking was the evidence. How did the evidence come out and escalate to the point that Keefe D will end up being arrested? On the 2nd of July 2018, Keefe D confessed to having a role in the demise of Tupac Amaru Shakur after revealing he was dying of cancer. Keefe D went on to say that he was the passenger in the white Cadillac on the night of the incident. Now, it's an interesting revelation. This is a situation that had gone over 2 decades. Imagine how Keefe D was sleeping at night since the night of the incident through to over 20 years. That is how it is. I think that the incident and Tupac was haunting this guy, and he had to build so much strength to keep himself together. Because why do the confession? Granted, he has cancer and he's dying of cancer. I feel that he feels he needs to set himself free by confessing. Because it's not an easy thing to live with the fact that you've taken someone's life and nobody knows. If you get to serve time in jail or in prison, your subconscious at least tells you that you've atoned for it in one way or the other. But to go unarrested, to go unpunished for over 20 years, it stays with you. And I think that the memory was haunting him, especially given how publicized the whole thing was. And at a point, it became obvious he felt that he was off the hook. He felt he had some form of immunity because he got a deal But little did he know that his deal didn't cover immunity. So, he refused to name the other suspects in the car after that confession, but then he confirmed that the shooter was Orlando Anderson, his nephew, and that it was out of retaliation for Orlando Anderson getting jumped at the MGM Grand earlier and the 1 million bounty by Puff Daddy. Now, these statements went to corroborate everything that the LAPD detective Greg Caden and the other writers had written about. And since Keefe D is a known associate of the Compton Crips gang, and the fact that he was there at that night and already a key suspect earlier on, this was deemed a confession. And like I said, it could be because he was dying of cancer, or it could be because of something else. But fast forward to the 29th of September 2023, Davis was taken into custody by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police in connection with the murder of Tupac Amaru Shakur. Subsequently, a house owned by his wife in nearby Henderson, Nevada, has been raided as well. And police documents stated that they were looking for items concerning the murder of Tupac Shakur in that raid. So that is where we are. Duane Keefe D is now in the grips of the law at the age of 60 years for a crime he allegedly committed or partook in its commission over almost 20-something years ago. This is an interesting case, and I've been following this case so much because I believe that Tupac needs justice. There were people who were of the view that the police didn't want to pay attention to the case because it was Tupac and he was a rapper, he's a black guy. But the police came out in a press conference to debunk all those claims and make it clear that they take every case as serious as the next one, irrespective of complexion. And I respect that. I think that sometimes the police have their work cut out for them because they can't just rush and conclude. There should be a method to what they do, because when it gets to court time, that becomes key, and that could also help with prosecution. And looking at the details of this case, this is a jigsaw puzzle the police are trying to still solve after over 20 years. And as it stands now, it has become very crucial for Duane Keith Davis, aka Keefe D, because he has now been arrested and is being charged with the shooting murder of Tupac Amaru Shakur on the 7th of September 1996. He is already 60 years and he has cancer. There are some who are saying that he feels he has nothing to lose and he had to put out the confession. There are some who are also saying that he's being haunted by the memory of Tupac and the ghost of Tupac. There are some who are also saying that he just slept, because this guy was all over talking about what happened, and he was on DJ Vlad's YouTube channel show talking about it inside out on several instances. There are people actually saying he snitched on himself. But I think that what we are seeing probably could be the truth finding a way to come out. You can't kill the truth. You can't hide the truth forever. It could take long, but eventually the truth finds a way to free itself and come out. I think that is what has happened to Duane Keith Davis, aka Keefe D. As it stands now, I'm waiting to see how things will go, and I'm following the case, and trust you me, we are going to get the updates as and when they are ready. Until then, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so, turn on post notifications, leave a comment in the comment section. Do you think Keefe D did it? Yeah, a part of me suspects he did. But like the law says, he is innocent until proven guilty. So I keep my hands up in the air, I'm sitting on the fence and my fingers are crossed. I'm waiting for how this will play out. Keep an eye out until then and stay safe out there. I'll catch you next one.